I guess when we were young, there was probably something that we wanted to do when we were grown up. Okay? If you well, just turn to a neighbor and just share with them when you were a child, if you can remember, what was it that you wanted to do when you grew up? So, did anyone here want to be a fireman? Come on, guys. Okay. Train driver. Anyone? Yes, thank you. There's at least one train driver in here. That's fantastic. Is anyone doing, let's say anyone over the age of 30, who's actually doing what they wanted to do when they were a child? No, okay. That didn't get a great response, that questioning, but anyway. I think the point I'd like to make is I think as you get older, your kind of aspirations change. So I'm pretty sure, we used to have a fire station here where we lived in London, and I know I just used to go and hang around and kind of gawp, and I just wanted to slide down that pole, you know, and it took me till I think I was about 27, because my oldest brother, his son is, my nephew's a fireman, and it took me many, many years before I actually got to slide down one of those poles. Anyway, but as I've got older, and I think it's probably tied to the fact that I became a Christian, it also because you start getting a better sense of your own mortality, I think you start to wonder about making a difference in the world. You begin to think, particularly perhaps when you know people who've died young, you then think, gosh, you know, what if I was to die now? You know, who apart from my immediate family, would anyone actually miss me? And then, you know, dwelling on this slightly morbid thought, what would I like someone to be able to say at my eulogy? Okay, you know, the address at the funeral, you know, is it going to be one of those saccharine, oh, you know, he or she was, you know, such a nice person. Oh, they were so nice, and they had such fun, and they really enjoyed traveling, and, you know, they went to wherever every year, and, you know, they just loved traveling, and, you know, they just were a much loved person. Thinking, you know, all these kind of saccharine words. Or would you like someone to be able to say about you, do you know, we're going to miss them so much because they made such a difference in our lives, or in somebody's life, or in this particular place. They made a difference. So the question I think we should ask ourselves, if we haven't already, is how do we live lives of significance? How do we live lives of influence? How do we live lives of impact? And so last week we started the series. We're working through the Sermon on the Mount. And it's called, for those of you who weren't here last Sunday, it's called Jesus Raw and Unfiltered. And if you're wondering why we've chosen this, it's because sometimes a lot of Jesus' teaching is kind of quite saccharine. It's explained in quite a sort of superficial way, and we kind of gloss over his hard teachings. I've even heard someone say, who was a minister, when I asked them about a particular passage, they said, I don't like that passage. I skip over it when I read the Bible. I'm going, well, these are Jesus' words. You can't skip over them, you know. And so what we're looking at is Jesus' teaching, raw and unfiltered. Jesus straight up, no hold bars. We're not looking through any rose-tinted spectacles. What he really said and meant. And today we come to what he had to say about how someone makes a difference. And it's in Matthew chapter 5, and we're beginning at verse 13. And if you've got a Bible, church Bible, it's on page 916. So this is what Jesus said. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. So, how do we become people of influence? Jesus says, you become the salt of the world and the light of the world. So let's look at that first bit. Now, in Jesus' day, salt was absolutely vital, and many of you may be thinking, well, of course it's really vital. You know, we always cook with it. A lot of food would be disgusting without it. But actually, it wasn't vital because of the taste it added. It was vital because it was used as a preservative. If you wanted meat to last longer, you would rub salt into it. Obviously, they didn't have any refrigerators back then. The salt stopped the decay. So when Jesus said, be salt to the earth, he meant we should live our lives in such a way that our very presence in the world acted like salt. Not just to add flavor. We all will know people who, wherever they are, in whatever context, they kind of add a flavor to a gathering. You know, they might be really extrovert, have a great sense of humor, they might be able to sing really well. You know, you really enjoy them being part of a social gathering because they add some real flavor to it. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about stopping the decay in the world. Now, you may think, Will, this is crazy. This is just little old me. How do you expect me? How does Jesus expect me to stop the decay in the world? I mean, surely this is for the kind of Winston Churchills, the Nelson Mandelas of the world. You know, I can't play my part in this. And I think you're wrong. Let me give you an example. Some of you may know how the civil rights movement in the USA started off. And it started off with a black lady getting onto a bus, and back then you were only allowed to sit in certain places, and can you believe it? I mean, you know, the whole thing is just like weird even to think it could have happened that way, but it did. And if lots of white people came on the bus, and the black people would have to make way, even getting out of the seats that were reserved for black people. Okay, and one day Rosa Parks gets on the bus, sits down, and there's a whole load of people get on. And there's lots of white people get on, and it starts filling up, and it gets to her seat, and the bus driver says, you, get off the bus. And you know, she just says, no, I am not getting off this bus. This is outrageous, and I am not going to get off this bus. So she gets arrested, and she unwittingly becomes the start of the American civil rights movement. She didn't wake up that morning thinking to herself, this is what I'm going to do. I've got this great vision for transforming the racial divide in the USA. She was overcome by a holy discontent, and she kicked it all off. All it takes is one person. We support a charity here called Samara's Appeal. Those of you on Facebook will have heard about it. It's our church is involved in it. And that was started by one young mother sitting at home, feeling really helpless because she had young kids and kind of couldn't get out and actually do anything. And she set it all up over the internet. And the result is there's container loads of kit, and we're collecting at the moment for the Samara's Winter Appeal. Lots and lots of you will have contributed to this, and somebody in our church also caught that vision. So there's another young mother with young kids living a completely frazzled time. She is making a difference. She's linking all of us in with that appeal. So one person can make a difference in the world. Are you with me on this? Yeah? Okay. So this is what Jesus is after, okay? This is what Jesus is after. When we live like salt, it impacts the world around us in a disproportionate measure. But make no mistake, it's acting in little ways that leads to the big events, the big moments, and the big opportunities that can change our world. Don't ever think you can't be a world changer, because you can. But Jesus also called people to be the light of the world, as Jesus was himself called the light of the world. So whereas salt is about making a stand, light is about revealing what is real. It's about showing the way. Imagine a big, powerful torch shining out into the darkness. Letting our light shine is having what Christ is doing in our life and the truth about what Christ wants to do in everyone's lives be known to the world. It's helping people to see beyond their shadows. Lots of people don't understand that they're living in a shadow world. They can't see beyond the bondage of their own situation. They can't see what life would be like if they weren't drug addicts, or they weren't addicted to alcohol, or they weren't addicted to whatever you want to think of. But when someone shines the light into their world, they can see something that is so much better. But it needs someone to come along and shine that light. Now, imagine if you discovered a cure for dementia, which must be one of the most dreadful diseases around. If you discovered that, you'd be saying, Will, can I borrow a megaphone and go and stand on the top of the church? I want everyone in Buckingham to know about this. You'd be on Facebook, you'd be on every single app imaginable, telling people you had found a cure to dementia. You would never keep it to yourself. And it should be precisely the same about Jesus. That's what Jesus means, that to make a difference in the world, you need to let your light shine in the world. And that light is the message of Jesus Christ. And it's sometimes, it is an improbable message to get your head around, that a God would come down into the earth in human form, that he would humble himself, he would allow himself to be arrested, spat at, humiliated, executed in the most excruciating way like a common criminal, so that all the mess in our lives that separates us from God got dumped on his shoulders. And then, just for good measure, he defeats death, rises again, proving to us that he isn't just some very heroic great teacher, but he really is the Son of God. That is the light that the world is so desperately in need of. All those dark places that Danny led us in those prayer for, they're dark because no one's shining a light in them. And if they are, in some places, they're being executed for it. Now, we have a choice. We have a choice. So to make a difference with your life, a real difference, means being salt and light, demonstrating moral courage in the face of a world of decay. Somebody private messaged me just earlier on saying there's a post on Buckingham What Matters to You saying, why are people against polygamy? What is wrong with polyamory? All this kind of stuff that's going on. Is someone going to make a stand against that? Where is all this going to end otherwise if we don't? And we need to convey the light of truth in this world of darkness. But did you notice Jesus' language? He doesn't say, listen, do your best to be salt and light. Try, understand being salt and light. He says, you are salt and light. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light in the world. And that's a massive challenge. Because it doesn't really present us with an option, does it? Because if you follow Jesus, he says, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. You are. In his reflection on this, John Stott rightly notes, he says this, one can hardly blame unsalted meat for going off. It's not the meat's fault, okay? It's because nobody is applying the salt to it. In a funny sort of way, it's not the world's fault it's going off the rails. It's because good people stand by and evil flourishes. So the real question to ask is, where is the salt? And the answer is I'm looking at it. Every time you brush your hair in the mirror, every time you clean your teeth in the mirror, you're looking at the salt. But Jesus doesn't stop there. And this is where, Jesus is harsh, okay? He says that if the salt loses its saltiness, it's of no use. It's thrown out, it's discarded, it's binned, it's rubbish, and worse than that, it's trampled by man. It's like a fag end going on the floor and somebody going like that. Do you want that to be you? You want to lead a life of insignificance, a life of meaninglessness, of unimportance? Do you want to leave no lasting legacy? Then you move away from being salt and light. And that's a word for those of us who consider ourselves followers of Jesus. We have to be salty, and we have to let our light shine. Jesus is saying that there's nothing more useless and pointless than someone who is a Christian in name only. Yes, I go to church. I'm a Christian. Look at my Bible tucked under my... there's nothing more useless than someone who calls themselves a Christian and is not the salt and the light. Someone who carries the title but doesn't live the life of influence. You see, Christianity is not simply about a life that is informed with certain deep and meaningful truths, although many of them are. It's not just about a life that is conformed to going to church, to certain practices and certain rituals. It's about a life that has been transformed through a relationship with the living God. That's what it's about. Lives that are being transformed by the living God. And when you allow yourself to be transformed, you become salt and light. But then you have to be that salt, you have to be that light to the world, because I think you can choose to refuse. You can refuse to stand for anything. You can refuse to stand against anything. You can refuse to stand with anything. You can choose to refuse to talk, to speak, to share. So make no mistake, being salt and light is a choice that you have to make. You don't have to act if you don't want to. But if you don't, the world will be a worse place. The world will decay. Imagine if Rosa Parks had just meekly got off that bus. I'm sure someone else would have done something later on, but it could have been years. It could have been years more of that awful oppression. The world will be dark. And the danger of our day, I think, is the absence of a sense of personal responsibility. It really bugs me that everyone knows all about their rights, okay, and very little about their responsibilities. We have a responsibility as Christians to respond to this challenge. And the challenge of Jesus is clear. It is to act. And we take that very, very seriously in this church family. I appreciate some of you are not part of the church family. I hope we've got some visitors here just perhaps exploring what the Christian faith is about. But we take it very seriously in this church that we have to act. So, for example, we've poured in a heap of money and time and effort and prayer into this building down in the town, which we call the Center. We want to be salt and light. We want people to see that we are trying to make a difference. What we've always said about the center, when the lease comes to an end and we have to look for somewhere else or a different way of doing things, that people in the town would say, we can't possibly allow the parish church not to continue with that kind of ministry because they make such a difference. We take it seriously. That's why we run Alpha here. That's why we should be all totally sold out in support of Alpha here. You know, the reality is a lot of us have done it many, many times, and we kind of, it's not Alpha again, is it? But you know, it's such a great opportunity for being salt and light, of helping people to see the light, to have the dark areas in their lives illuminated so they can see Jesus' love for them. We also need people helping in church here. It's interesting, we have grown an awful lot. Praise God, it's fantastic. And I keep on thinking, a little bit more growth, and then I won't have to ask anyone to volunteer to help anymore. Because we'll have so many people coming to church. It's going to be, I'm sorry, you want to help in the children's group? Sorry, in a year or two's time, when you matured a bit, you can help. It's not like that. It's really not like that. We really need, if you're not serving in the church, you're not really being salt and light, okay? You've got to get involved somewhere, okay? And before you think I'm trying to hit you over the head with a rota to serve, every single Sunday ad nauseam, I'm not saying that at all. You talk to Emma, who runs the children's group. Do you know what I mean? We had 50 children this morning. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Guys, you need to come at the 9:30 now and again. 50 kids is a lot of children, okay? It's like the most we have had here for many, many years, okay? We are going back decades since we had 50 children coming to the Sunday morning groups, okay? I'm just so excited about this. You speak to Emma about it, and it's like, okay, she just wants a few people to offer to help her one Sunday a term, okay? Don't think we need you every single week, but if a few people said, yeah, we'll do once a term, Emma's going to be so grateful to you. It's the same, you saw the slide for the PA and the AV and all the sound and the visuals and stuff like that. We could do with some more people on that. The more people we'll have, the less often it has to be done. We've got the most incredible team. Did you see that? The number of people up here in the band, and thank goodness Hannah hasn't had a baby, so Mikey was able to be here tonight. But that's one way of being salt and light. You're going to hear more about this on Vision Sunday, which is the 2nd of October. We really want to move into a bigger premises. We want to take over a warehouse. This is just a dream. I think it's a God-inspired dream. It is terribly exciting. And we want lots of space so we can do lots of other activities, so we can be more salt and more light in the community. There's like only 1 or 1.5 days here where we can do a funeral because there's so much stuff going on in the church during the week. Okay, it's going to be great to have a different location which is much bigger and we can grow into. And what I really want to do is to develop this capacity for mobilizing the people of God to be missionary disciples. That's quite a big kind of line. I'll say it again. To develop a greater capacity for mobilizing the people of God, all of us, okay, to be missionary disciples. I want to, in a sense, create an army here of people who want to go out and make a difference, who want to go out and be salt and light in the world. That's what we're about, making disciples, mobilizing you to invite more people in. So they come in, they hear the message of the good news, they become Christians, and then they go out and make a difference. I wonder if you've got friends at work you know are perhaps just one invitation away from coming here to hear the good news of Jesus. One invitation away to coming on Alpha with the possibility of their lives being transformed. Are you going to invite them? So to conclude, the challenge Jesus brings to all of us is clear. What are you going to do with your one and only life? What are you going to do with your one and only life? Massive question. The younger you are, the longer you've got to think that one through. But if you're my age, you're thinking, what are you going to do with your one and only life? Will you live the life that you were meant to live by being who God has called you to be? Because God has a calling on all of your lives to be salt and light. How are you going to live that life? Or will you just head home and just carry on as if nothing had changed?